Welcome back to the Rivercity Rundown. I'm your host Jeremy, and it's time for our weekly starts and sits episode. Every week, I break down the players that I think you should have locked into your lineup and the ones that you might want to bench, even if the name value tempts you. Let's jump into it. Let's start off with the guys that I'm confident in this week. To kick things off, I've got Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys visiting the Chicago Bears. The reason why is the Cowboys throw the ball often, and Dak has a plethora of targets to choose from. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson. Not to mention, the Bears just allowed 5 passing touchdowns to Jared Goff and the Lions last week. Now, with defensive back Jalen Johnson reportedly out the rest of the season, I expect Dallas to attack Chicago's weakness, their secondary. I've got a bold prediction here of Dak throwing for over 300 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns. And moving on to the running back start of the week, I've got Ashton Jeanty and the Las Vegas Raiders facing off against the Washington Commanders. I know that what we've seen from the Raiders through 2 weeks has been uninspiring to say the least, but I think that after seeing Geno Smith throw some egregious passes last week, and most of them to Chargers defenders, the Raiders finally realized that they drafted Jeanty with the expectations of being their bell cow back in this offense, and that requires utilizing his skills early and often. Now listen, I know he's not a very good pass blocker, which is the main reason he's been off the field on third downs, but I see him being used much more and finally having that breakout game that fantasy managers have been patiently waiting for. My bold prediction for Jeanty this week is 20 plus rushing attempts, finally going to crack the century mark, and 2 touchdowns. I just think that this is a week where he's going to finally bounce back, and fantasy managers are going to be thankful that they held on to him. And my wide receiver start of the week, I've got Nico Collins and the Houston Texans facing off against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's been a relatively quiet 2 weeks for Collins, and he did manage to salvage his week 2 production when he caught a touchdown pass in the back of the end zone against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday. But this week against Jacksonville, I've got Collins as my wide receiver 1. He's in line for a huge target share and his first big game of 2025. Here's why. Jacksonville currently ranks 26th against the wide receivers, and in his last 4 games against the Jacksonville Jags, he's been a game wrecker, reeling in 29 of 38 targets for 408 yards and 2 touchdowns. CJ Stroud has also thrown for over 1,070 yards and 7 touchdowns with a passer rating of 110 in those 4 games. With not much competition in the wide receiver room in Houston, I expect Collins to dominate the target share and to rack up a lot of yards in the process once again. My bold prediction for Collins is he's going to reel in 9 catches for over 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. And my tight end start of the week, I've got Kyle Pitts and the Atlanta Falcons visiting the Carolina Panthers. He's really back. It appears we're seeing the best version of Kyle Pitts since his rookie year, and Michael Penix has been looking at him early and often on passing downs. He's brought in 11 of 13 targets through 2 weeks. In a matchup this week against the Panthers, who rank 30th against tight ends, he's poised to have a big game. As Drake London draws the J.C. Horn shadow this week and the offense runs through Bijan Robinson, it's time to showcase the full pass-catching ability that Pitts has to offer. I've got my bold prediction of Kyle Pitts catching 6 catches for 75 yards and his first touchdown of the 2025 campaign. Now here's my sleeper pick for you all to consider throwing in your flex spot. I've got Troy Franklin and the Denver Broncos going against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, in a small sample size this season, it looks like Troy Franklin and Bo Nix have rekindled that college connection. Through 2 games, Franklin's 6.9 average depth of target underscores his usage in the Broncos offense, mostly underneath routes, and although he has been used mostly in underneath routes, he and Nix connected on a 42-yard dart up the left sideline last week versus Indy. Franklin totaled 24 PPR fantasy points in week 2 and a 30% target share. And while I'm not expecting him to maintain or replicate that production in week 3, it would be extremely encouraging if he maintained a 22 to 25% target share and potentially adding another touchdown to his 2025 totals. If he does this, he'll firmly thrust himself into the conversation of breakout players for this season. My bold prediction for him is 6 catches on at least 8 targets for 55 yards and a touchdown. Now let's talk about the guys I'd be cautious with this week, the sits. To start things off at the quarterback position, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars going against the Houston Texans. Lawrence has struggled out of the gate this season, and he has yet to find his top 3 playmakers, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, or Brennan Strange, for passing touchdowns. Through his 8 career games against the Texans, Lawrence has completed just 59% of his pass attempts for 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. This season, he's at that same exact completion percentage. Now, in 2 games, he's completed 59% of his throws, has 4 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. He's also got 6 carries for 16 yards. This week, he's up against a great pass rush who can get after the quarterback in a hurry. I think he'll be under duress early and often, and I'd be looking for other options this week at the quarterback position. Some names I'd feel comfortable starting over Trevor Lawrence are Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, and Mac Jones, just to provide some context to how confident I feel in Lawrence's abilities this weekend. And my running back sit of this week is Omarion Hampton and the LA Chargers versus the Denver Broncos. Now, there was so much hype surrounding Hampton and what his role could look like in this offense, with Greg Roman as the new OC, bolstering the offensive line. All signs were pointing towards a high usage rate for the rookie. Although, the Chargers had other plans in mind. They are a pass-centric offense, and Justin Herbert has been using his legs when necessary. The opportunities for Hampton to have a big game have been minimal, and even in the limited opportunities, the O-line hasn't provided much running room for him to go through anyways. Until the Chargers show us that they're going to give him 15 plus touches a game and utilize him in the passing offense, he should be on your bench if you have any other options at all. My wide receiver sit of this week is Garrett Wilson and the New York Jets facing off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tyrod Taylor is going to be under center this Sunday, with Justin Fields currently in concussion protocol, and Tampa Bay's defense just did a really good job containing Nico Collins to 3 catches on 9 targets for 52 yards, and most of those 52 came on a chunk play. I know he got a touchdown, but it was really the only thing that salvaged his entire day. If you have any other options, I'd consider benching Garrett Wilson this Sunday. My tight end sit for this week is Evan Ingram of the Denver Broncos facing off against the Los Angeles Chargers. We had a lot of hopes to see what Evan Ingram could look like under a Sean Payton-led offense and a second-year Bo Nix, hoping that he might bring some version of, that vertical threat that we saw at flashes of last season. With Sean Payton having brought the best version of Jimmy Graham out of that, I know a lot of us were hoping for something close to that. Now, that has not been the case so far, as Ingram, through 2 games, has only a 4% target share. Rewind that, you did not mishear that. A 4% target share. And they are not looking his way. They're not manufacturing plays designed for him. Not to mention that he's once again dealing with injuries the same way he did when he was a Giant. Until his target share is at least in the double digits, I'm staying away from him, and at best, he's a bench stash in case things turn around and they decide to finally use him more. And the matchup I'm looking forward to watching most in Week 3 is got to be the Detroit Lions facing off against the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. Fantasy-wise, this game could be a gold mine. The current over-under is 52.5 points, which means there's going to be a ton of points scored by both teams in this one. And I will be looking to get a piece of this game any way I can. If you've got players in this one, it could swing their entire week. So those are my starts and sits for Week 3. Remember, fantasy football isn't always about playing the biggest names. It's about playing the right matchups and trends. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following Rivercity Rundown on Instagram at Rivercity_Rundown for updates and extra fantasy content. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening. Good luck in Week 3. I'll be back after the weekend to break down the results and call out the studs and duds. Until then, set those lineups and may your flex spot never betray you. Peace.